home? Will this be a contested convention?
It appears that we're headed that way. I don't see very many options that would go down a different path.
In that situation, what will you be considering? What types of rules will you be considering? Because right now the rules say that you have to win at least 8 states or 8 different districts in order to be considered. And the only person who's done that so far is Donald Trump.
Well, and that's a misunderstanding. That rule actually is different than that. That's a vote that needs to be taken at the convention of the delegates. The requirement is that the candidate must demonstrate the support of the majority of the delegates from 8 states that are permanently seated. So that vote can't even be taken until the convention. So obviously, no determination can be made until the convention.
So that vote that we thought, or that rule that we thought stood, is not a rule that actually stands?
No, it is a rule that stands, but the rule says specifically that it's a vote of the delegates at the convention to determine if there's a majority.
Voters.
Not a primary vote. Primary votes are not considered. It's the delegates' votes. The delegates cannot vote until they're permanently seated, and that's the first action of the convention. So
most of the delegates are going to be bound delegates who are required to vote as the voters sent them. I think there's only like 116 unbound delegates. And Gary, maybe you can weigh in and say whether you think things will go, how you think things will go on this first vote if most of these delegates are bound.
Well, first of all, North Dakota is one of the states. There's 3 states and 2 territories that have unbound delegates. I think there's about 112 of them. And North Dakota is one. Our convention is in April 1st, and then that'll determine if I'm actually one of the elected delegates that are elected at the convention. But what happens is, let's say Trump gets to 95% or 90% or Ted Cruz. What happens is those unbound delegates have the ability to vote for whatever candidate they want on the first ballot. And that is what could change and give power to those delegates who will be voting on that first ballot. And, of course, once you go to the second ballot, if no one wins with 50%, which is really majority, 50% plus 1, then it's all bets off.
Okay, I understand that these are the rules and that there's all kinds of crazy arcane rules that could be voted on between now and then. But, Curly, let me ask you, if Donald Trump heads into the nomination, maybe he's short of the 1237 required, if you give it to someone who has a much lesser percentage of the voters who have actually turned out for these primaries, don't you worry that you are going to just send chaos and anger into the Trump supporters, into the people who feel like their votes don't matter?
No, I don't think that's the case. If it would just be understood. We have a problem with the media. Unfortunately, the cable networks are trying to determine.
I don't think this is a problem with the media. I've heard from a lot of voters who say if they feel like their votes got stolen, that they would be very unhappy and very angry. I think you're looking at a different situation. I realize these have been the rules, but the last time these rules were put in place was 1976. It's been a long time since then.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah, that's a problem. The media has created the perception that the voters will decide the nomination, and that's the conflict here.
We feel like we live in a democratic society. What you're telling me is it's not a democratic society, and your votes don't necessarily matter because it's a democratic representation, correct?
No, that's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to say is that we're just one of the political parties. There's many political parties, but political parties choose their nominee, not the general public, contrary to popular belief.
Then why bother holding the primaries?
That's a very good question.
Look, Gary, hold on. You're a Republican.
No, because a Republican would say that, the people, what the people say matters, big government is bad. I would assume that's your view.
Well, part of the problem is perception's reality in politics. And so if the Republicans go in and pull some shenanigans, and so you have groups of people who are going to try to take over the Rules Committee, that could totally change everything and mess things up with the delegates, and the people across the country will be very frustrated and not vote in the general election this fall for Republican candidates.